It's the Rob Carson Show. Are you ready to be podsmacked? Now, here's Rob Carson.
And this is episode number 41. 41 of the podcast. Could you believe that? Welcome to it, guys. We've got a lot of things to get to on the show today. Do want to mention the new website, which is Rob Carson Show, just robcarsonshow.com. On Facebook, of course, it is at Rob Carson Show. We have a theme here, don't we? And then if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's just Rob Carson. Okay? All right. So I guess the big news was the president's State of the Union address, or I should say the joint address to Congress. That's what they're calling it. I believe almost 80% of the nation, those who watched the speech, gave it a positive review. But there were some very interesting and notable moments last night. There were some soaring moments. There were some moving moments. We'll get to some of those, like I said, as the show progresses. I was a little disappointed in the Democrat Party last night. Maxine Waters did not show. She wanted to try and get others to not show, like they did at like she did and others did at the inauguration, but she couldn't, I guess, muster the energy necessary. It kind of reminded me of, you ever seen the movie Old School with, here's another one of the soaring lines from the address last night.
We are one people with one destiny. We all bleed the same blood. We all salute the same great American flag. And we all are made by the same God.
Now, there's a line. I would assume that if you believe in God, if you believe in unity as the American people, you'd applaud for that. But the Democrats largely did not applaud this. He doubled down on the Great Wall.
We want all Americans to succeed, but that can't happen in an environment of lawless chaos. We must restore integrity and the rule of law at our borders. For that reason, we will soon begin the construction of a great wall along our southern border.
You can almost hear Democrats' heads exploding. Here he is on battling ISIS, another line that Democrats did not applaud.
We are also taking strong measures to protect our nation from radical Islamic terrorism. As promised, I directed the Department of Defense to develop a plan to demolish and destroy ISIS, a network of lawless savages that have slaughtered Muslims and Christians and men and women and children of all faiths and all beliefs. We will work with our allies, including our friends and allies in the Muslim world, to extinguish this vile enemy from our planet.
Now, there was a common refrain last night, and I spoke last night on KMOX about it, and that was last night Donald Trump looked presidential for the first time. And while his demeanor was and should have been presidential, it wasn't all that different from some of his other speeches. He's been saying a lot of the same things for quite some time. I would say his inaugural address was presidential, but it took apparently some people by surprise, including avowed communist and CNN commentator Van Jones.
We are blessed to be joined tonight by Corinne Owens, the widow of U.S. Navy Special Operator, Senior Chief William
Wait, his reaction is coming.
Ryan Owens. Ryan died as he lived, a warrior and a hero, battling against terrorism and securing our nation.
He became president of the United States in that moment, period. There are a lot of people who have a lot of reason to be frustrated with him, to be fearful of him, to be mad at him. But that was one of the most extraordinary moments you have ever seen in American politics, period.
Wow. That's a pretty big deal coming from a hater like Van Jones. Yeah, I use the word hater. Here's Chris Wallace last night talking about the president's performance.
I want to say this right, but I feel like tonight Donald Trump became the president of the United States.
You haven't been paying attention. You haven't been paying attention. He's been saying all of the things that we heard last night. There was nothing new last night. It was building a wall. There was repealing and replacing Obamacare. He did pay tribute to a widow. And that was a very powerful moment. I get it. But I guess to say that last night he suddenly became presidential, like I said, I don't think you've been paying attention. It was a great speech. Don't get me wrong. What wasn't so great was the Democrat response. They got a DNC former governor of the state of Kentucky, Stephen Beshear, and he was in a cafe with muted lighting and a bunch of old white people behind him. Here's a little bit of his response last night.
400 miles from Washington, at a diner with some neighbors, Democrats and Republicans, where we just watched the president's address. I'm a proud Democrat, but first and foremost, I'm a proud Republican and Democrat and mostly American.
What?
And like many of you, I am worried about the future of this nation. Look, I grew up in Kentucky in a small town called Dawson Springs.
Yeah.
My dad and granddad were Baptist preachers. My family owned a funeral home. And my wife, Jane, and I have been married for almost 50 years. I became governor at the start of the global recession. And after 8 years, we left things a lot better than we found them.
Okay, so there's a little bit of the rather weak response. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking, to be quite honest. You don't need a crowd of constituents in a cafe, in a little diner. Here's Rachel Maddow. She said it was a very small and stunty response.
The cast from Westworld.
I think the response is always trouble. It's always bad. I think I hear you on this. I don't think this sinks to the level of Bobby Jindal. Hi. But but I mean there have been good ones. Remember, I think one of the good ones was when Bob McDonnell gave the first response like 5 minutes after he'd been inaugurated as governor of Virginia to one of Barack Obama's first speeches. That was good because they made him look sort of State of the Union-esque. They put him in the chamber. It was a formal looking speech. Whenever you try to do something stunty and small like this, I think it ends up looking stunty and small.
I thought it looked stunty and small, to be quite honest. And it was not. It was underwhelming, to say the least. I think their best bet would have just not to had a response. It's like, that speech was pretty good. We're just gonna let it sit like that. Yeah, we're gonna leave it alone. We're gonna leave it alone. Anyway, that was the first State of the Union address. I knew that State of the Unions were going to be good with Donald Trump. That was one of the things that I've been saying for a very long time. Was that this is going to get good with him as the president. This is going to be interesting. And last night was not bombastic. It was genuine, and I thought it touched both sides of the aisle. And I thought he repeated some of the same things, not backing down, unflinchingly, still going after Obamacare, still going after the wall. Thought it was a good speech. A good speech. Well, let's talk about. Oh, and this is kind of funny. It's interesting because you hear all this criticism on the left about the president, with the exception of Van Jones. You've heard from, as I mentioned earlier, Bill Maher and others going after the president, saying that he used a grieving widow as a prop. Here is a little montage of a Democrat response, media response, after Barack Obama's first State of the Union address. Here it is.
Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews. Leading off tonight, the battle last night. It was his debut, and he wowed us. That's the running headline from last night's presidential address to the Congress. Barack Obama gave a great speech filled with upbeat themes, common sense economics, and a strong personal agenda on health, education, and energy.
Came right out of the box and said, make no mistake about it, we are going to recover. That's the most important thing he wanted the country to hear last night. He began on hope. He ended on hope. Now, in between, there's an awful lot of hard things to be done, but I think he made a start at inspiring hope out in the country.
What can the Republican response be, however, to one in which there seem to be so many themes? How do you come out against recovering the nation's sense of self and its optimism? How do you come out against words like boldly, wisely, swiftly, and aggressively?
How do you come out against not defeating ISIS? How do you not? A lot of things were said last night. How about bringing jobs back to America? How about lowering taxes? How about draining the swamp? How could you possibly come out against those things? See the difference? Depends on your perspective. Yesterday, actually, a pretty big thing happened. Donald Trump ended an EPA policy. It basically gave the EPA regulatory authority over things as small as a pond in your backyard. Here's the president yesterday before his address, talking about repealing this onerous EPA rule.
EPA's so-called Waters of the United States rule is one of the worst examples of federal regulation, and it has truly run amok and is one of the rules most strongly opposed by farmers, ranchers, and agricultural workers all across our land. It's prohibiting them from being allowed to do what they're supposed to be doing. It's been a disaster. The Clean Waters Act says that the EPA can regulate navigable waters, meaning waters that truly affect interstate commerce. But a few years ago, the EPA decided that navigable waters can mean nearly every puddle or every ditch on a farmer's land or any place else that they decide, right? It was a massive power grab. The EPA's regulators were putting people out of jobs by the hundreds of thousands, and regulations and permits started treating our wonderful small farmers and small businesses as if they were a major industrial polluter. They treated them horribly, horribly. If you want to build a new home, for example, you have to worry about getting hit with a huge fine if you fill in as much as a puddle, just a puddle on your lot. I've seen it. In fact, when it was first shown to me, I said, "No, you're kidding, aren't you?" But they weren't kidding. In one case in Wyoming, a rancher was fined $37,000 a day by the EPA for digging his small watering hole for his cattle. His land. These abuses were and are why such incredible opposition to this rule from the hundreds of organizations took place in all 50 states. It's a horrible, horrible rule. Has sort of a nice name, but everything else is bad. I've been hearing about it for years and years. I didn't know I'd necessarily be in this position to do something about it, but we've been hearing about it for years. With today's executive order, I'm directing the EPA to take action, paving the way for the elimination of this very destructive and horrible rule.
I love it. I love it. And he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And I love the fact that he's gone after the EPA. The EPA has overreached so far and cost people their jobs, their livelihood. They've had their nose in our business. Now let's go after the IRS. Can we do that next, Mr. President? Would you please do that? Yesterday, actually the night before last, Jon Stewart was on the Stephen Colbert show, made an appearance. And every once in a while, he'll say something I agree with him. I disagree with him wholesale on a lot of things, but I think the guy's pretty funny. He actually called out the media because, Donald Trump has been calling CNN fake news, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He called out the media. Here's Jon Stewart calling out the media on the Stephen Colbert show.
Hey guys. Hey, media. So I heard Donald Trump broke up with you. It stings a little, doesn't it? Finally thought you'd met your match. A blabbermouth who's as thin-skinned and narcissistic as you are.
Nice.
Well, now it's over. Well, good riddance, I say. Kick him to the curb.
All right, so there's
Thank you.
a little bit more here.
It is time for you to get your groove back, media. Because let's face facts, you kind of let yourself go a little bit for these past few years. Put on a few pundits, obsessing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week about this one guy. What's Donnie up to? Did he say anything about us? You think he's going to come on our show? Do you think he even likes us? He doesn't even have to come on. He can just call us. Oh, Donnie, please, just let us know you're okay.
Very nice. And he makes a lot of sense because the media, when Donald Trump was president, couldn't wait to get him on. CNN, MSNBC, everybody was begging to get this guy on because their ratings would go through the ceiling. And now that he's calling them out, they want nothing to do with him. So good for you, Jon Stewart. That was nice. That was nice. All right. I wanted to mention the new chairman of the DNC delivered his speech yesterday. And his name's Tom Perez. He beat out Keith Ellison. He's not a fresh face in the Democrat Party. And I had mentioned earlier that the more the left caterwauls, the more the left calls names, the more the left sits down and doesn't applaud, the more the left doesn't go to speeches, the more they're going to harm themselves, the more the Democrat Party is going to harm themselves. This man yesterday did not offer an optimistic vision for the future that the Democrat Party could offer anyone, but he did once again name call. When you use words like slavery and Jim Crow and racism and all of these things, when you cry these things at the drop of a hat, eventually they're going to fall upon deaf ears. I have a feeling the only people that'll energize are people who are morally outraged, the very small, very leftist friends of the Democrat Party. Here is Tom Perez.
Jewish religious communities, whether it's our Jewish brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters, when they were being subject to increasing hate crimes, when millions were at risk of
It's not happening, by the way. That's not true.
Losing their health care, when we had a president.
How could millions of people lose their health care? We have Obamacare. It's supposed to insure everybody. But now millions of people did lose their health care because they were promised that they could keep their plan and they could keep their doctor. And look what happened.
Whose idea of national security was deporting Abuelita and issuing a Muslim ban, racist in its origin and horrific in its application.
It is not racist in its origin. First of all, being a Muslim is not a race. Second of all, it wasn't the basis to stop people coming in from 7 countries.
Unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Declared by Republican and Democratic judges, and something that is only a recruiting tool for extremists. Where were you when all this stuff was going on? Where were you when Donald Trump and Republicans from the far right were targeting Latino communities? And
is this inspiring you? Is this making you feel better about the direction the Democrat Party is going? Because all they're doing is caterwauling.
Threatening to turn back the clock of history and progress.
There we go.
I feel so frequently, when the plane lands and they say you should set your clocks to whatever the local time is, I feel so frequently today like we should be setting our clocks back to Jim Crow.
By the way, that was a Democrat policy.
I feel so frequently like we should be setting our clocks back to the mid-19th century, because this is a know-nothing era in our nation's history. And you know what? Fear was able
to... It's a know-nothing era. You're way ahead of the game there, buddy. I mean, really, you really are.
Defeat hope on the ballot. When hope's on the ballot, we win.
Okay, when hope is on the ballot, we win. The only thing that you had on the ballot, by the way, in the last election was raise the minimum wage and essentially recreate the WPA with public works projects. That was it. What kind of hope does that offer you? What kind of hope does it offer you? When you're focused on letting men who dress like women go to the girls' room, and that's one of your party platform issues, what kind of hope does that offer? Doesn't offer me any hope. This is funny, how much pee is in the average swimming pool when you go swimming? Apparently, they tested a bunch of swimming pools around the country and discovered that there was pee in all of them. Scientists now have been able to confirm the full extent of offending for the first time after developing a test designed to estimate how much urine has been covertly added to the large volume of water. They say basically in a large pool, you will find around 30 liters of urine. Are you doing that too? I'm doing that too. 30 liters in an Olympic-sized pool, there are guaranteed to be about 30 liters of pee. Here's a nonsensical story today. The Richmond Times-Dispatch reports the University of Richmond suspending 5 baseball players. You know why they were suspended? They were playing fantasy football. 5 students will be ineligible for competition until the NCAA's reinstatement process has been completed. The prohibition, which keeps athletes from participating in fantasy sports, is made unmistakably clear in the NCAA rulebook. The NCAA rulebook states, do not place a wager on any college or professional sporting event. This includes fantasy leagues, sports pools, and March Madness brackets. Okay, it's clear. But don't you think the NCAA should take a second look and realize that this is not a fantasy baseball league, it's a fantasy football league? And this is what guys do. I don't, because I know nothing about sports. The Obamas have signed a book deal. They did it together, apparently, because they wanted to get into a bidding war, and they won. It looks like they're going to get $65 million for each of their memoirs. Former President Bill Clinton was paid $15 million for his book, My Life. And you know why you wanted that book, because of the juicy stuff, right? It didn't pay off. Former President George W. Bush earned $10 million for his book, Decision Points. That was published by Crown. Barack Obama earned $8.8 million for his 2006 book, The Audacity of Hope, and the children's book, Of Thee I Sing, A Letter to My Daughters. In addition, he earned $6.8 million for his 1995 memoir, even though he hadn't lived much life or done much of anything, Dreams from My Father. One more thing, I want to mention this. There's a new PSA that is running, and it's about young girls wanting more streets, monuments, and landmarks named after women. It talks about how there are many things that have women's names on them, but they're inconsequential. And I'm all for girl power, don't get me wrong, but is there a hue and cry for more buildings named after women? Or roads being named after women? I don't know. I mean, are we going to have trans streets too? I mean, look, there's the word trans in transportation. Here's a little bit of this PSA. Girls demanding names of women be put on buildings, highways, and whatnot.
Mary Jane's, Shirley Temple, Daisy Dukes.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Maybe a Bloody Mary. I want to be a Lazy Susan. The Rachel.
The haircut from 20 years ago?
Yeah. Those things that sometimes movers have that have like metal wheels and they carry boxes and stuff.
Oh, you mean a dolly?
Yeah, a dolly.
Actually, I want to be a $1 coin no one uses anymore.
There's actually two of them. There's Sacagawea, and then there's the other one, including the Sacagawea dollar.
I want to be Aunt Flo.
So I guess somebody finds Lazy Susan offensive. I don't know. I suppose. All right, listen, it's about time for me to get out of here. I greatly appreciate you checking out the podcast today. Today is the 1st of March. Oh, my gosh, it's the 1st of March. I will be on KMOX tonight from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. Ditto for tomorrow night, the 2nd. And a privilege to be on that radio station. So if you are up either one of these nights, please listen. If not, you can catch it on the podcast as well. Again, my website is robcarsonshow.com. You can also check out my Patreon page. And if you could maybe give me $1 or $5 a month to do the podcast, it would be greatly appreciated against patreon.com, patreon.com. Just look for Rob Carson Show. In the meantime, take care of yourself. God bless, and we'll see you for episode number 42 soon.
Thanks for listening to The Rob Carson Show. Friend him on Facebook at Carson Show, on Twitter at Rob Carson, and on Instagram, I think Facebook and Twitter are enough for now. We'll see you soon.